we were promised freedom. Neoliberal capitalism sold itself as the antidote to bureaucracy, inefficiency, and control. No more 5-year plans, no more central committees, no more endless paperwork. Just lean, innovative, self-regulating markets. That was the dream. But reality? Instead of killing bureaucracy, capitalism spread it everywhere, made it leaner, faster, harder to see. This is what Mark Fisher called capitalist realism. For decades, capitalism was sold as the anti-bureaucracy system. It was supposed to be fast, dynamic, innovative, but that's not what happened. The experience of an ordinary employee in a modern corporation, a teacher in a public school, or a nurse in a hospital is often one of paperwork and procedural regulations as suffocating as anything in Kafka's darkest novels. Instead of disappearing, bureaucracy has changed its form, and this new, decentralized form has allowed it to proliferate. The neoliberal ethos of competition and accountability introduced a myriad of metrics, audits, and performance reviews in every field. Governments and companies, under the banner of making institutions more efficient and businesslike, instituted target-driven regimes. Schools live and die by test scores and attendance numbers. Universities by publication indexes and student satisfaction surveys. Call centers by call volume stats. Warehouses by itemized productivity quotas. This is bureaucracy via the market. What Fisher, with sardonic bite, terms market Stalinism. On the surface, power was decentralized. Hierarchical offices gave way to networked teams. Bosses rebranded themselves as team leaders or facilitators. The old bureaucratic pyramid was replaced by an electronic panopticon. Information systems that give top managers a comprehensive picture of an organization, with data on every employee. And crucially, much of this information is provided by workers themselves. We have entered the age of self-auditing and self-surveillance, where each employee is expected to constantly generate reports, evaluations, and numeric proof of their own effectiveness. Fisher draws a parallel to Kafka's nightmarish vision of bureaucracy, but with a twist. In Kafka's The Castle, the protagonist grapples with a monolithic, mysterious authority. Unreachable officials in a looming castle who send confusing directives. In our world, the castle is dissolved into the network. Power is dispersed, but this only makes the bureaucratic machine more maddening. A decentralized, market-Stalinist bureaucracy is far more Kafkaesque than one in which there is a central authority, Fisher observes. Why? Because when there is no identifiable person in charge, responsibility evaporates. Anyone who has tried to correct an error with an insurance bill or navigate an automated customer service line knows this feeling. You are shuttled through phone menus and faceless departments. The building rage that must remain impotent because it can have no legitimate object. There's no big boss to blame. Instead, you encounter a system that is unresponsive, impersonal, centerless, abstract, an endlessly looping call center or an online forum that leads nowhere. It is, effectively, the artificial stupidity of capital in itself, a machine-like process devoid of human oversight or mercy. In the workplace, this dynamic instills a kind of low-level existential anxiety. Fisher adapts Kafka's terminology to describe contemporary labor regimes. Under the old industrial model, a worker might get ostensible acquittal. You do your job and, barring any major issue, you're left alone until the next periodic review. Under the new regime, you live under indefinite postponement. Never fired outright, but never free of scrutiny either. Your case is perpetually reopened in the form of continuous monitoring. The judgment, evaluation, is never definitively delivered, so anxiety becomes permanent. The result was actually more total inspection, diffused throughout daily activity. Surveillance and monitoring are outsourced to the college and ultimately to lecturers themselves, making them internalize the inspector's gaze at all times. In corporate settings, we see similar trends. Employees must fill out weekly self-evaluations, project reviews, log their minutes spent on each task, and so on. The worker becomes their own bureaucrat, splitting themselves into the laborer and the clerk, recording the labor. New bureaucracy invades all areas of work, with the result that, as Kafka prophesized, workers become their own auditors, forced to assess their own performance.
I don't care if they lay me off either, because I told Bill that if they move my desk one more time, then I'm quitting. I'm going to quit. And I told Dom too, because they've moved my desk 4 times already this year, and I used to be over by the window and I could see the squirrels, and they were married, but then they switched. See?
Hi, Milton.
But
What's happening?
Milton,
We're going to need to go ahead and move you downstairs into storage B.
No,
We
I was told I could
have some
not.
new people coming in, and we need all the space we can get.
But there's no space.
So if you could just go ahead and pack up your stuff and move it down there,
But no,
that would be terrific.
I was told
Okay.
I could stay.
Where does this all lead? To an age of total surveillance. Neoliberalism didn't just create new forms of control, it merged them with big tech. This insight connects to Gilles Deleuze's idea of the control society. In a famous 1990 essay, Deleuze argued that we have shifted from Foucauldian disciplinary societies with enclosed institutions like prisons, schools, factories, enforcing rigid rules, to control societies, where power is continuous and diffuse. Fisher explicitly links this concept to neoliberal labor practices. There's no contradiction between being smart and the increase of administration and regulation. There are two sides of labor in control societies. The new ideal worker is dynamic and nomadic, flexible, spontaneous, as Zizek summarizes the ethos. But this celebration of flexibility masks the reality that workers are more tightly bound by surveillance than ever.
Probably wants a blowjob. It's disgusting. But they think I am anyways.
You can wear casual clothes and call your boss by their first name, but your company emails and Slack are monitoring your keystrokes, and your output is measured against fine-grained KPIs. In fact, flattening hierarchies often means intensifying control. The flattening of pyramidal hierarchies has actually led to more surveillance of workers, Sennett found, because technology allows micromanagement at a distance. Everyone is watched, but no one admits to doing the watching. It's just the system. This is why Fisher calls our workplace bureaucracy Kafkaesque. In Kafka's word, the most tormenting thing is the absence of a clear authority to petition. Similarly, in late capitalism, the big other, Lacan's term for the imagined authority of the social order, persists as an inscrutable web of data and procedures. We still act as if some overarching order is evaluating us, because indeed the algorithms and audits function as a kind of big other to impress. Teachers tailor their lessons not to students' needs, but to what Ofsted, the inspection regime, wants to see. Workers in a company start performing for the metric rather than for the tangible outcome. Fisher cites an academic who notes that the information that audit creates is so shorn of local detail as to be misleading or meaningless, except by the aesthetic criteria of audit itself. In other words, people learn to look good on paper, often at the expense of doing what's actually good. This is bureaucratic simulacrum, Appearances matter more than reality, a trait that late capitalism ironically shares with the Soviet bureaus it once mocked. The upshot of Fisher's critique is not that we swapped one bureaucracy, state, for another, corporate, but that neoliberalism fused market and bureaucracy into a novel apparatus of control. He calls it a fusion of PR and bureaucracy, where every piece of data serves both to regulate internally and to promote externally. Universities, for example, trumpet their rising rankings, products of bureaucratic processes, as marketing tools to attract students, which in turn justifies more intense management to keep those numbers up. It's a self-perpetuating loop. And crucially, this system manages to feel apolitical. The language is of quality assurance, excellence, efficiency, technocratic buzzwords that make it seem merely natural that we should continually measure and optimize. But Fisher's historical lens reminds us that this was a conscious political project. Neoliberal reforms in education and public services introduced these mechanisms as a way to break old forms of labor power and instill a market discipline. The bitter paradox of capitalist realism is that it paints a picture of capitalism as lean, dynamic, and anti-bureaucratic, while in reality, late capitalism relies on a sprawling bureaucratic machinery, a machinery of ratings, audits, and managerial diktats that would make a Soviet apparatchik blush. Freedom, it turned out, often means the freedom to fill out forms.